guys, I'm going to do an all about Face ID video with our intern iPad rehabs, Owen Rogers. Owen's been the in-house Face ID expert, so he's figured a lot of this stuff out, and we've come to tell you what is repairable, what isn't repairable, and how to go after these Face ID not working phones. So here's the big picture. The big picture is that phones and their Face ID really come in two flavors. You've got a phone and it's kind of like a clam. You got a clam shell, you got the top shell, the screen, and you got the stuff that's down here in the bottom, the top and the bottom. On the top, there's one really important piece, and that is the flood illuminator. About half of your Face ID repairs are going to be flood illuminator problems that you can fix. And then we've got the bottom half of the clamshell. This is your infrared camera, your selfie camera, and especially your dot projector. So on the bottom side, the dot projector repair is the big one. So let's look a little bit in detail so that we know these pieces that we're talking about, so that we know how they work together, and we can start addressing these failures. And then Owen is going to do a repair and fix the flood illuminator problem that we have on a real live case. All right, so let's look under the microscope together. All right, so what we have here is the screen and flood illuminator. Where is it? Well, it's part of this, what we call the front flex. This plugs in, and this guy gets ripped a lot by accident, and that's going to take out Face ID because it's going to disconnect the flood illuminator piece from the rest of the board. And the flood illuminator is a really important part of Face ID. So I've got one of these that's kind of taken apart here. And you can see that this front flex has a bunch of things on it: microphone, speaker, ambient light sensor. And on this one, we have removed the flood illuminator. It lives right there. It's a little square guy. And you're going to see Owen do one of these flood illuminator transfer repairs. So anytime you, I don't know, Owen, what would you say are the most common flood illuminator based problems that you've seen?
Yeah, so the most common problems we've seen is a ripped flex or one little drop of water underneath the flood illuminator and above the flex, the front flex, so it causes some corrosion.
Yeah, sort of that COVID damage, right?
Yes.
You got your Windex and you're wiping your phone. There's an ear speaker there, single drop of water. Guess what's right behind there? Flood illuminator, and that can take out your Face ID. So any kind of torn flex. What about iPads?
It's a lot of torn flex problems. You know, as most people know, any iPad with Face ID, it only comes to about a 30-degree angle before you have to unscrew the bracket and unplug the flex. People who are unfamiliar with that repair can just rip it straight open, and the flex will tear very easily.
I can see myself doing that.
Easily tears.
So if you've torn the flex there, you've severed the flood illuminator from the rest of the iPad. Can that be fixed?
Yes, it can be fixed the same way that we're going to show today.
Yep, so we're going to learn how to desolder the flood illuminator and move it around. Now, if your flood illuminator, let's say I smash it with a hammer, can you fix that and bring back Face ID?
A completely broken flood illuminator cannot be fixed.
No, so your native flood illuminator must work. It can be transferred around if you break the flex, but that flood must work. That is the top side of Face ID repair. Now, before we jump into how do you move the flood around, let's talk about the bottom half of Face ID. So what's going on down here with your Face ID system?
So in the bottom part of our Face ID system is the true depth camera, which is the pairing between the selfie camera and the infrared camera.
So
The
these
yellow.
two guys.
Yes.
So this is your selfie camera, that's your infrared camera, and together they're going to look at you in stereo vision like a little ET that's able to get that depth perception.
Yeah.
And what are they looking for?
They're looking for the dots that are cast on your face by the dot projector immediately to the right of the
This
front
little guy?
facing camera. Yes.
Yeah, so the dot projector, that's your guy when we're talking about problems down here in the bottom half of the clamshell, the true depth area. So this infrared camera, can you replace it?
No, it is.
No, unique to the device, got to be there, got to work. And what about the selfie cam? Can I replace that?
No, not for functionality of Face ID.
Not for Face ID, but I can just, if I were to just, smash that with a hammer, I could take this whole piece from another guy's phone, plug it in, and I could get a camera back, but no Face ID.
No Face ID.
So for Face ID, these two must be native. So when we're talking about bottom of the clamshell problems, it's really just dot projector. So in a nutshell, are the repairable Face ID problems flood transfer or dot projector or trash can? Is that pretty much it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and I think that's the heart of this video. Face ID not working. Give us a flow chart on how you might approach that.
Yeah, so the way I approach these problems is your flood illuminator, if there's a problem with that, like a Face ID unavailable message.
And is Face ID unavailable message always mean flood problem, top board problem, or top of the clamshell?
It means that's the first problem that you're going to see possibly in a line of them. So you're going to start off with a flood problem in the cases that we see, and then let's say you clear that the way you're about to see, and then as you move through theirs, you can see something with a true depth camera, and that can present itself like a true depth error.
So flood illuminator problems trump everything else. You got to fix that, and you'll know you have a flood problem when you see Face ID unavailable. Or you go to settings, you set up Face ID unavailable, where it doesn't even let you try. It doesn't turn on the porch lights, right?
Yes,
because that's what the flood illuminator does. Now, a lot of times, how do these faults happen? Torn flex, those are going to be fixed just by fixing the flood illuminator. But when you get really bad water damage, like our test case here, really severe water damage in these, this is an iPhone XS, you see corrosion in there, then a lot of times, Face ID unavailable, you fix the flood illuminator, and that will then reveal second problems, third problems in Face ID down here on the bottom. So if you fix Face ID by getting back your flood illuminator, so now the device can go, I see a face, turn on the lights. The next thing it's going to do is activate the dot projector, throw out dots, and then the next thing it's going to do is receive them back with the stereo vision cameras and match them.
Yes.
So what happens if you've got a problem down here? What will that look like on the phone?
That's going to look like an error with true depth camera in settings. It won't present itself like a notification like a flood illuminator problem will. It will tell you in settings when you go to set up Face ID that you have a problem with true depth camera.
Now, where in there is it a top clamshell, bottom clamshell is the, the move higher, move lower problem?
That is a bottom of the clamshell problem.
Okay, so, and which piece? Is it repairable?
Yes, it is repairable. It's going to be part of the dot projector and the prism.
Okay, so the dot projector, can you replace the dot projector?
Yes.
Yes, but it's not easy. What do you have to do?
It's a certain read-write operation. There is a new flex that must be programmed, and you transfer the dot projector from one to the other.
Can I use this flex, or do I need to go get some special, naked flex to put it on?
You're going to need a special naked flex.
Okay, so you've got to get the special programmer, and then the special flexes, and they're all going to be different, right? I can't just take one from another phone.
No.
Okay, so let's say fixing the dot projector requires specialty equipment, which is why today's video is going to start off with Owen showing us how to fix the common problem far and away that we see all the time, which is Face ID unavailable. Your flood illuminator can't shine a light on the face. You got to fix that before anything else. All right, Owen, are you ready to walk us through a phone? We've got a test case here right in front of us that I believe is Face ID unavailable. I'm a little worried that it's going to have other problems because I'll tell you right now, this was here for data recovery and it didn't turn on, and when I opened it up there was a lot of green and it had a short circuit, which I already solved, and now got the data, now it says Face ID unavailable. So this is one, in your experience, is that a good sign or a bad sign?
It can go both ways, but usually it means you have more work to do.
Okay, so it's not uncommon with heavy water damage to have multiple faults in that Face ID system. Okay, Owen, I'm going to turf it over to you here. I'm going to give you this phone, and you're going to walk us through how to work on this flood problem, okay?
Awesome. Can't
All right,
wait.
sounds good. Let's jump in. All right, so here it is. Phone turns on, and it says unable to activate Face ID on this phone. All right, take it from there.
All right. All right, so I'm going to start off by opening this phone up and get a good look at our flood illuminator. All right, so our flood illuminator flex is disconnected, and I'll just go ahead and take our screen off, like so. And before we do anything, this assembly has to come off the screen, and then we can see it under the microscope. I've isolated our front flex from the screen, and let's check this flood illuminator out under the microscope. Oh yeah.
That's bad.
Yes. That
Now,
is a lot.
sometimes the flood illuminator itself is straight up killed. And in that case, can you fix it?
No, because it's tied to the device. This is not something you can just replace and get a new one. So if this is killed, end of the road. End of the road for you.
So your only hope here is that that corrosion didn't actually kill the encrypted flood illuminator and that you can transfer it to a good flex.
Yeah, that's a lot in there.
I told you. That was fair warning. There was like a lot. It was kind of like that in the whole top of the phone.
That's amazing.
Yep.
All right. Now, I like to use a piece of metal as kind of a heat sink while I put air on top of this thing. My mat usually bubbles up, so this is specifically my favorite.
The Karl Marx.
The Karl Marx metal
Owen's heat
disc.
Yes.
And this earpiece is magnetic, so it can stick itself down quite well. Now all I'm going to do right now is tape this down, and I'll be able to get on it with some hot air. Also, the tape bonds much better to metal than it does a work mat. Okay. Now we're ready to take this off. Come off. Okay. Our flood illuminator is off, and we have a lot of corrosion underneath these pads.
You want to flip it upside down so we can let's look at flip it up so we can see its feet.
All right. First of all, I want to say one thing. Remember the orientation that this went on. So
I don't think that's that important because one time Mark put one on upside down. It didn't work.
But it didn't kill it.
But it didn't kill it. So then he was able to realize, I remember him coming going, which way does this go? I'm like, not that way. And it still worked. So he was able to recover Face ID. Okay, so let's look at this one upside down though and see how bad is it on the actual flood. Do you think that you can tell just from looking at it whether or not the flood illuminator itself is alive? I mean, that doesn't look too bad.
Yeah, that looks all right. Usually the most annoyance comes from these two pads on the flex. As you can see, there's a lot of corrosion right there, and this is the annoying part. Usually, with a lot of corrosion, you can get out quite well with the flood illuminator.
Okay, so now you're going to transfer that flood illuminator to are you going to get a brand new flex, or what are we going to do? Where are we going to get a new flex?
So with this, there's corrosion there, so I'm quite sure I can clean it off, make nice puffy pillows, and just set the flood illuminator back on and have working Face ID.
So instead of transferring, we're going to just clean, but put it back down?
Yes.
Okay. Could you transfer it if you wanted to?
Yeah, of course.
So can you buy new flexes?
You can.
Okay, and they come with the ear speaker and the ambient light and everything else?
Yes, they come with their own flood illuminator, but that is essentially trash. You'd want to take that off and put the new one on always.
Okay, so you have to buy these like premium flexes that...
Yeah.
Because I think there's some flexes that are like not solderable or whatever, where they won't accept a flood transfer, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Or you could you get one from another 10S, like somebody donated, or iCloud lock phone?
Yeah, you could.
Okay, so it's just simple, take it off just like this and then put it back on.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are you going to do for us? Clean it and put it back down?
Yeah, first I am going to clean the bottom. I'm going to clean this flex, and then I will clean and reball the bottom of this. And then it will be ready to put back on.
All right, so let's do how about we do a good old-fashioned sped up YouTube?
Okay.
And we'll watch it happen. All right,
Great.
Make it so.
Okay. So I'm going to be using this jig that you can find on our store. It has everything you need for these Face ID repairs, plus a stencil and places to put your flood illuminator once you're ready to reball. This is very essential to any of these repairs. You can find it on iPad Rehab Store. My favorite is to use this clamp here for the cleaning.
That's cool. I didn't know it could do that.
Oh yeah, this is the best. When we have corrosion like this on these two pads, I usually like to clear this, and then I'll come at it with some copper braid, and then after that's cleaned off, then we can reball. Alright, so our flood illuminator is reballed, and I'm now going to clean the bottom flex so I can put the flood illuminator on and resolder. I think a new flex would be good because there's copper coming out between those. That would just need UV mask and a whole bunch of stuff.
All right, so it sounds like as you've gotten into it, the pads on the flex are chewed up too much, and it sounds like you think it would be safer to just, instead of doing the up-down cleaning, to solve this one by taking that flood and putting it on a new flex.
Yeah, right now cleaning, there's two pads that have just been reduced to black nothingness. A new front flex for a transfer would be ideal for this repair.
Okay, so I'll get you one of those, and we're going to carry on. So this time you're just going to take that same flood that you've already reballed, and you're just going to put it on a new flex. Oh, there you go. Okay, so you got that off, and you're just throwing that flood away because it's paired to the...
Who knows what?
Yeah, to whoever that phone's long gone.
Yes.
And everything else about this flex, the ear speaker, the microphone, the ambient light sensor, that all is perfectly fine to transfer. Okay, so you've touched up the receiver flex, and what's next?
I'm just going to clean it off with a little bit of alcohol and drop the new flood illuminator down, and we should be with a working Face ID.
I don't know, man. Yeah, a lot of corrosion in that phone.
Well,
All right.
we'll see.
We'll see. Okay, so it seemed like it went on okay.
Yeah, went on quite well.
Time to test, or
Yes, let's see what this has done for us.
what? So when I test Face ID, I like to make sure I don't want to kill the dot projector by not having the screen in there. So is this what you do? Fully install it or what?
Yeah, you want to fully install any kind of Face ID component before you test your repair. It needs the flood illuminator and the bottom of the clamshell all in line to work properly. And if, like, let's say you even put your screen back down, because if your flood illuminator is, your phone's like this, and your flood illuminator is looking out this way, but they want the dots up here, it's not going to work. So you always want to completely reinstall and close your screen when you test these things.
Got to have a closed clam to test. You're even putting the screws in.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll put two in, just the top two. It needs to hold itself in place.
Now, how often does transferring the flood illuminator from an old flex to a new flex when there's water damage, how often does that solve the unable to detect Face ID problem?
That solves it just about every time. If not,
So death of the flood illuminator itself is pretty rare.
yes.
Okay. Now, if this one doesn't work, that's going to be pretty. Then you're going to have to stay here for another year.
Well,
So when are you? So you're where are you going? What's next for Owen?
I'm headed off to Central Coast, California, specifically San Luis Obispo. I will be a computer science student at Cal Poly. I have some of their merch on right now. Everyone should go check that place out. It's great. Home of iFixit.
So when you went there for your orientation, you got to go to iFixit. What was that like?
Yeah, iFixit is a great place. I really liked my tour there and around the city. I'm very excited to go back.
So you're leaving like in.
I leave on Sunday, so 2 days. Three days.
When are you coming back to Honey I Falls?
I will be coming back around Christmas time.
So you're going to be gone from. Is that the longest you've ever been away from home?
Yeah.
And you're just super excited. That's what it's like to be young, man. You're like, I'm out of here, Mom and Dad. How are your mom and dad handling it?
I'm going to say that they're excited for me.
They're going to wait to cry until the plane takes off?
Yeah, until they...
So are we. All right, so
All
now
right.
let's go to the hand cam so that we can see what happens. Oh, hand cam, we'll get rid of this. Okay, so you've plugged it in
We have Apple logo.
and we'll see whether or not it can still boot up. So last we saw this phone, it was unable to detect Face ID. So we
Yes.
know that's a flood problem. Okay, and so the message is gone,
Yes,
right?
this is a good sign.
That's a good sign. So already your flood transfer had to have worked because we've cleared that message that comes up when the phone boots. Okay, so now we're going to cross our fingers and ask, is there another problem? Is there a second problem with this phone? So how do we do that? Try to detect
Yeah.
Face ID?
We're going to go to settings and
Okay, hold on. We need a Brad cam for that. I'm going to come over here to get some side cameras. So now you're going to go ahead and see, can I set up Face ID? So you're going to do what?
Okay.
So what was that? Okay.
I went to set up Face ID and realized I'm going back on my own promise. I'll close the phone first.
Full clamshell to test.
Yes. Now let's get started. Okay. Right now it's telling me to move my phone a little lower. And then shortly I am sure it'll tell me to move a little higher.
Oh, there you go. Second problem with the Face ID system.
Yes.
Hopefully, everybody knows how to diagnose that.
Yeah.
And?
This is our move higher, move lower problem.
Okay.
This is going to be bottom of the clamshell.
Okay, so this is typical though, right? Where this had frank water damage. This is an iPhone XS, a lot of corrosion in the phone. And Owen was able to fix the top of the clamshell flood illuminator with a flood illuminator transfer, cleared the message unable to activate Face ID, leaving you with the phone saying, all right, porch lights are on now. Let me go ahead and throw some dots on Owen's face. And it can't do that because this is a dot projector problem, right? Okay, so that very specific move higher, move lower means I can't get the dots out. I'm not detecting the dots. Okay.
Yeah. Dot projector problem.
Dot projector problem. Okay, so as far as we see, the flood illuminator transfer is the top problem, probably 80% of Face ID. And that usually will solve most cases that don't have frank water damage like this one. If you do have frank water damage, you got a bottom of the clamshell problem. What are your next steps?
You want to go through a read-write repair.
So you're gonna have to take off that dot projector?
Yeah, so our dot projector is on a flex that's mounted on a glass prism. You want to remove that flex and the dot projector off of the prism, and you can program a new flex and reattach the dot projector to the new one. Just like what we did with the flood illuminator, it comes off of a bad flex and it goes onto a good one.
What's the chance, just from your experience, that you solve the dots, move higher, move lower goes away, that then if there's more water damage in Face ID, what will happen?
So the move higher, move lower problem is usually fixed, I would say 8 out of 10 times. The problems where you do the dot projector and on your diagnostic tool it tells you that your dot projector is good, I think your Face ID is going to work, and then
So you need one of the little special readers?
Yeah, with
You'd
special readers.
plug the dot projector in and it will say, can you show us just that?
Yeah. It's right here.
There's different brands of these, and you've tried different ones. There was something up with, you got frustrated with one of the brands. What's up with that?
There was one brand that we tried. It was the first, and
the JCID?
The JCID. And every time I would have this problem known as the ugly technician problem.
Tell us about that.
So the ugly technician problem is basically the phone thinks you're too ugly to use Face ID.
Yeah. And yet you're the inventor of the ugly technician problem, and you've coined that term.
Yeah, you can do your flood transfer, you can do your dot projector repair, and you think you're all good to go, your error messages are clear, and you open it up, it sees your face and dots. It cannot stand your face.
So what happens? Is it just...
That's the ugly technician problem.
It doesn't let you do the circle?
No, you can keep your face out of the little box, the white border lines, but as soon as it gets in there, it's just done. No Face ID for you.
So Face ID kind of kills itself because So, and that
In a
was
way.
and that was a brand problem with the flexes that you were doing the dot projector repair.
Yeah, and once we did switch to Chanley, we were able to have some successful dot projector reprograms.
Yes. So now we only use this brand. So that's
Yes.
just sort of a tip or trick. And you can learn a lot more of these tips and tricks because we inserted Face ID into Practical Board Repair School. So if you want to have us walk you through all the little temperatures and times and special things and things that Owen has learned the hard way for the last like 6 months or so.
The hard way, definitely.
Then you can come and visit us for repair school. But what other tips and tricks are there? So the ugly technician problem is part of dot projector repair, or
Yeah.
does that happen just natively, or what?
That's usually a dot projector repair problem.
Okay.
After is when I've seen it.
A
It's not usually.
consequence of that.
Yeah, it's not usually something I open up the phone, it sees my face, and then it says, "Nope." It's just
Not you. Anybody else?
It's after you did something.
Okay. So now let's say you do a successful dot projector repair on this phone, given the corrosion that was in there. Do you think Face ID would work? Or do you think that after jumping through that hoop, you would then find a true depth camera problem?
I'm willing to bet that I can fix the Face ID problem we're having right now, which is move higher, move lower. That is a coined problem that is fixable, and it shouldn't be hiding a further problem with the infrared camera. That's usually our end of the line. You do the flood transfer, you do your dot projector repair, and then your infrared camera is not working. It's been masked by the two problems before it.
Okay. So show us what the little reader does. So the reader will tell you, yes, indeed, your diagnosis is correct, as you think this now has a second problem, dot projector has killed itself.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, prove it.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and open the phone up again, and I'm going to take out the assembly in the bottom of the clamp.
The bottom of the clamp. And you're going to put it on a reader that will tell us if the dot projector's okay.
Yes. Okay.
Well, good job clearing your unable to activate Face ID message.
Yes, that is always a good.
And so you think
feeling.
most phones, then Face ID works and everything's fine. That's been my experience. I have not seen a whole bunch of dot projector problems or true depth camera problems, mostly because we're just doing data recovery on these heavy water damage ones anyway.
All right. So this battery, the top part at least, needs to come up, and the adhesive needs to be removed. Once that is cleared, you can go ahead and remove the 3 flexes attaching the true depth camera dot projector assembly to the board.
So there's 3 bottom clamshell piece flexes. So that's the bottom clamshell piece.
Yes.
It looks like ET.
Now, here's our tool, and you want to find your corresponding socket connector, and you want to plug in the dot projector flex. That's usually the shortest one, at least on this XS, but it's easily identifiable if you just take a good look at where it goes. It's not too difficult.
So show us which one's the dot projector. The little guy on the end.
Here, and I'm going to plug this small flex in.
Okay.
And we can go ahead and test this with this button here.
Okay.
And that will give us an indication in each one of these boxes.
Okay.
So a good test will give us check marks in all of them, but a bad one will give us X's.
So it's just testing pieces of the dot projector,
Okay.
which looks like you got an F.
Yes, we got a very big F.
Okay.
Fused.
What does fused mean?
So, fused, that's just their broad term for, there is...
For effed up?
Yeah, this is not, there is something wrong with your dot projector.
Fused for F.
Yeah.
Fail. Okay.
And the letters underneath these boxes on the tool indicate portions, like locations on the dot projector itself like the 4 quadrants. So like this could be D, this could be B, this could be A, this could be S.
Okay.
That's not exact. I'm just.
And do sometimes
Pointing it
you just get a D failure? Or is it always like the whole thing either
It's either the whole thing or nothing. Usually when I've seen like 1 or 2 be good, that's after you have tried to solder it back on and you just improperly attached it.
Gotcha.
That's the only time that I've seen only a few of them fail.
So this tool at least is good for, now we know for sure. I mean, you knew
Yeah.
from experience, but now we know for sure that you fixed the flood and that your dot projector was also bad, which makes sense because it's got the move higher, move lower.
Yeah.
So now on this one, so, I mean, I know you got to go to school and all, but would you fix dot projector on this?
I would like to fix dot projector. That's.
Okay.
I like that repair.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I think that the whole dot projector is pretty specialized, and I
Yeah.
think that how many times has it like come up? Like not a lot.
No, it's.
It could be because we're like kind of siphoning them off due to water damage. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's usually what happens because we take in so much water damage for data recovery only. It's not something that will get passed on as fix this.
Yeah.
Usually donated devices, I will practice this dot projector repair.
Okay. All right, sounds good. So let's review then. I think the dot projector repair is so big and requires special stuff
Yeah.
and glue, prisms, and some mechanical stuff
Yeah.
that it kind of deserves its own video.
I agree.
So we'll say maybe we'll see
Yeah.
whether or not Owen has time to squeeze in
Perhaps.
a second video. But just to review for everybody, what we see the most of is top of the clamshell flood problems, and those can be solved whether it's water damage or a torn flex or it's an iPad by the same thing, what you just saw Owen do, which is take that flood off. And it's a really prissy part, so there's a lot of finesse to it that's probably hard to pick up in the video that's just kind of condensed.
Yeah.
And then it goes on to a new flex, and that will solve you're unable to activate Face ID. Once you solve that, then it'll either work, which it does most of the time, unless you've got one like this with heavy water damage, in which case you got to go down the rabbit hole of the bottom of the clamshell and you got to make sure your dot projector works, which will show up as a move higher, move lower. Sometimes if the dot projector isn't working, it will still give you the problem with the true depth camera. Or maybe you've got a problem with your front camera or your infrared camera, which are those like stereo vision cameras detecting those dots. All that must work in order for Face ID to work. The only things that you can replace is the dot projector. Everything else, you can move it from one flex to another, but that component has to work. All right. Well done, Owen, on your video. And we wish you the best of luck in your college career.
Yeah.
And thanks for taking the time to, I know you've worked on this for months and have had a lot of fun figuring it all out. So well done, good job. Everybody appreciates it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, we'll see, maybe you'll see a part 2 about the dot projector repair in specific, and if not, you can find at iPadRehab.com, click Supply Store, and you'll see a link where we are selling the fun little jig, this stencil for reballing your flood. This is really, really cool, really important, and I'm pretty sure we're selling maybe Owen's favorite little, whatever that thing is called.
The disc?
The disc, yeah. I'm going to call it Owen's disc.
Yeah.
Yeah, so look in the supply store for Owen's disc.
That seems
Yeah.
dangerous.
What do you mean?
Say it a few times. Say it real fast.
Owen's disc. It's fine, right? I mean,
Up to interpretation.
I don't know. If Sunday has a problem with it, that means it's really bad. Okay. All right. We'll see you next time. So you have done the glue work, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And now what's going on? You put everything back together?
Yeah, I have everything put back together, and we're gonna turn the phone on and
So we can
what
see
happens.
what does it do? Because it was doing the move higher, move lower, because it had a bad dot. Hey, all right, there it is. And we still have our, no longer have our message.
Yes.
Okay, so now let's give it a try. So you set a passcode so that you'd be able to test it. Okay. All right, so now what happens?
Gonna go to Face ID.
It's thinking hard.
Yes.
It decided to say okay. All right.
Okay, we're greeted with no error message here.
Okay.
So this is promising.
Okay.
Now let's set this up.
Ooh. All right. Did it let you do this before?
Before I did the dot projector transfer?
Yeah.
No.
All right. So it's wanting you to move higher. Ooh.
Yes.
It gave you a circle. You didn't get that before.
I'm in the circle. I'm in the circle.
Yes.
Scan complete.
All right. So it worked, right?
Yes.
Yes.
We get this
Awesome.
message.
Face ID is now set up. Wow, that was a lot of corrosion. Good job.
awesome.
Well done. Awesome. Face ID success. High five. All right. And your first video.
Great.
All right. In the books. Good job, Owen.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice work.